We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. This is Thursday if you're listening to it on the podcast, and we are recording it Wednesday night. And as so often the case, we have Eric back with us. He was going to be on Friday, and then something happened, and I said, "Can you be on tonight?" And he said, "Sure." So I feel fortunate to have Eric in on short notice, but there's always plenty to talk about, especially with what's going on now. So welcome, Eric. Thanks for jumping in at the last moment.
Well, thanks for having me. I wasn't doing much. So you said, "Hey, you need some help?" I said, "Sure, why not?"
Nice.
Tonight was one of the nights I told you I was available anyway, so you know,
Yeah, I was
figured
trying to
let's
remember.
get
You
into
said
it.
every night but Thursday, and so I thought to myself, "Hey, it's fucking Wednesday. That might work." So I'd take a shot. And anyway, here we are. Um, we You were on the live the other night, last night, and we didn't get a chance. That's one thing about the lives. You get so many people coming in, you never get a chance to elaborate on some of your thoughts and what's going on. And I know people look forward to hearing what you have to say about certain things. Um, we've always said, you and I have always said that, it's going to get messy before it gets better, but things will start to fall apart. And now what we're seeing in Donald Trump's administration, Bovino going to El Centro, maybe retiring, Christy Nome throwing Stephen Miller under the bus, Stephen Miller backing up a little bit, which is unusual because they always double down. There's obviously something going on within the administration, and it's not a positive thing for them. Don't you get that sense?
Kind of. I think somebody is going to take the brunt for this. Bovino is already kind of a scapegoat, but I think they're watching the reactions, and I think they're looking for the next person to be the big scapegoat, whether that's Christy Nome or if it's Stephen Miller. One of them, at least publicly, is going to be on the out. Maybe it would be Miller, where he is out as whatever advisory position he's in, and he's still hanging around somewhere, though.
Well, we've seen him do this before. Mike Waltz was responsible for the national security leak with the Signal chat, and he got fired, but then ended up being an ambassador to the UN. So, who the fuck knows what this clown is going to do? Stephen Miller truly is the problem. Christy Nome is just dumb as fuck. Um, Nothing good could possibly come out of this. Now, when they got rid of Bovino and he said he was going to take out some of the ICE agents, I think people had a sigh of relief there, thinking, okay, this is over and he's going to start pulling out. But I think we know better than that with Donald Trump. It's not over. There's still shit going on. And it's going to be a while yet before we're done in Minneapolis with the crazy shit they're doing, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think they're quite done with Minneapolis, and they really weren't expecting Minneapolis and the people of Minnesota in general, or Americans for that matter, to react the way they did with regards to everything going on. That they thought they could easily just go in, push over Minnesota. Oh, it's going to be fine because that's not one of the cities you think of when you think of tough people, right? You
Yeah.
know, you think about like, oh, well, they're going to go into New York, and everyone's like, oh, fuck, New Yorkers are going to put them in their place, or they're going to go into Chicago. Yeah, try that in Chicago, that kind of thing. You don't think of Minnesota, you think of Minnesota nice, kind of like Iowa and Iowa nice, and they're finding out very quickly that nice has its limits.
Well, it does. And when you start killing people on the streets, kidnapping 5-year-old children, and doing all these things, people in this state, like I've always said, they're Minnesota nice. It's a very passive aggressive nice. So they're more nice to your face because they have a little bit of a tough side too. But if you fuck with Minnesotans, they kind of pull together and will kick some ass. The fact that we had 10, 15, 20, maybe even 75,000 people at any given protest in 10 below weather, that shows a certain amount of commitment. And I think Donald Trump and the administration were a little freaked out because of what you said. They didn't expect this. They come in, they're bullies. They expect people to back off and give them whatever they want. And we both know that when you have a bully and you don't give them what they want and you push back, then they've got problems. So this is why they're in their situation with their problems now.
Yeah, they're doubling down, like they're regrouping, trying to figure out what, okay, can we double down on this? Can we push back? Do we have to back it down? Like, do I throw somebody under the bus and save Donald Trump here? What he doesn't understand, and Donald Trump is never going to understand, is that he's not as liked as he thinks he is.
No.
And no amount of throwing Kristi Noem or Stephen Miller or Pam Bondi or any of them under the bus here is going to save the Republican parties in the midterm. They're going to get blown out. He's terrified of it. He was talking about that here in Iowa. He said, "Well, if the Democrats win the midterms, they're going to impeach me again. They'll find something. They'll say, 'Well, you turned off at the wrong exit on the road, and that's it. We're going to impeach him.'" And
Find something.
he's
All you have to do is take a dart and throw it at any day in the calendar year and decide what he did that day, and it's probably impeachable.
more than likely there is a list going, and but he sees the writing on the wall, and he's worried about becoming a lame duck. And but I don't think he is fully aware of how bad it is, that there's nothing going to save him come November.
Well, and the idea that you can kill two people in the street, you can kidnap people, you can break into people's homes, you can beat people up, you can destroy property, that by just getting rid of Bovino and maybe Nome and or Stephen Miller, that's going to take the heat off of him. What he doesn't understand, he is the tip of the spear in everybody's minds. He is the one responsible from top to bottom. He can't shed this blame. He's going to be stuck with this blame until he can't accept anything anymore, and he's choking on a Big Mac because everybody knows who to blame in this. I mean, they're going to blame Noam and stuff, but they know it all starts with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump can act like I don't know anything. I'll just fire this guy. I think he's under a delusion if he thinks he can sweep this away and come out safe on the other side in this particular instance.
Well, he is delusional, and part of it's the dementia. I'm convinced at 100% that he is battling some level of cognitive impairment, some level of dementia. And part of it is the narcissism, that he's convinced he's always right, that he's the smartest person in the room. His staff isn't telling him everything.
No,
And what you said was very telling. He's going to say he didn't know. He does. Have you ever noticed, for somebody who likes to talk about how powerful he is and how much he knows and how smart he is, he never knows a damn thing? Ask him about anything. Well, I didn't know about that. I don't know about that. I wasn't told about that. I wasn't aware of that. He never knows a damn thing.
no, he doesn't know anything about anything that's difficult. And he can't stay on track either. The other day he was kind of backing off because he knew he was in trouble. He gets rid of Bavino. He's talking a little more sensitive about what went on. He wasn't giving anything away, but he was being better at it. Then he comes out today and he starts diminishing um, the killing of Alex Preddy. Well, it's not a big deal. Well, it's not a big deal to you, but it is a big deal to the people of Minnesota. It is a big deal to the family members of Alex Preddy, but he's just trying to wash it away like it's not a big deal. Now, he's done this before with other situations, but killing people, that's a step too far, and he's not going to be able to accomplish it here. People of Minnesota will never forget or forgive Donald Trump.
Well, this is going to put it to the test, something he said way back in 2016, when he said, "I could shoot a man on Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters." I think he may actually come to lose some supporters over this. And him saying it's not a big deal that an American citizen has died is tone deaf at best. I mean, we've gone to war over less.
Yeah,
The death of
absolutely.
a few American citizens was enough, I think, to bring us into World War One, if I'm not mistaken. And the Japanese, sure, they attacked our navy at Pearl Harbor, and we lost a lot of soldiers, and we got drug in. We've been on the brink of war because of the death of a few Americans overseas. Donald Trump doesn't understand, and he will never understand it because he has no sympathy, no empathy. If it's not about Donald Trump, he doesn't understand why people care.
No, and he continues to inflame the situation, whether it's inadvertently or on purpose. I'll give you an example. We had the situation yesterday where Ilhan Omar was speaking at a town hall in Minneapolis. Now, unlike Republican town halls, it was going pretty well. It was pretty civil. You know, she was doing what she was doing and she was answering questions. Then some fucking clown steps up with a syringe and sprays some fluid on her. We still don't know what it is. Turns out this guy is kind of a creepy motherfucker. If you look back at his track record and the things he's done, he's got a few DWIs. He's been posting things against Biden and Kamala Harris. He's been posting things positive for Donald Trump. So you can try to say this is a libtard, but it's not. It's clearly not. And you notice they're not talking about it much. But when asked about it, Donald Trump said, well, I don't like Ilhan Omar because she's a fraud. She probably paid somebody to do it. Not showing any sympathy for this sort of thing or any decency for this. This is not helping Donald Trump at this point. He's losing ground every fucking day.
Well, the FBI is investigating, which how far that's going to go, I have no idea because you've got cross-eyed Patel, running the FBI, and
Yeah.
you know, Donald Trump will say, "Well, don't talk about it. Don't look into it too seriously." And there may not be anything there. But I did read an article tonight. They know what it was that she got sprayed with apple cider vinegar.
Why?
I don't know that the article didn't say as to why, other than the fact that it stinks. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I could think of. Is it's embarrassing because it stinks? I don't know. Um, but this guy was a Trump supporter. Donald Trump came out, says, she probably paid someone to do it, or whatever, as a publicity stunt. And every accusation is a confession. Makes you wonder about the attempt on him at Butler, Pennsylvania. That is something he would have done. But then when he was here in Iowa, just hours before that happened with Ilhan Omar, he said, "Well, she's fraud. She's coming from what? What? How did he put it? She's coming from a country. Oh, it's a very bad country. I don't know. Maybe it isn't a country at all, or something like that."
Yeah.
It was a wandering insult against her country. And then this guy goes and does that. And he's clearly a Trump supporter. And he thinks we
Yeah,
can't draw the connection.
right. And he's inciting these sorts of things, everything from January 6th to Ilhan Omar. And the thing about it is I live in the state of Minnesota. Ilhan Omar doesn't represent my district. Um, but how is she? It's got to be the fact that she's an immigrant. It's got to be the fact that she's black. Because while she is outspoken about things, what's she been involved in that's making him mad? You know, she's less involved in AOC probably. She's less powerful than AOC or some of those other reps. He's just got a hard on for her because she happens to be Muslim.
That's a big chunk of it. She's Muslim. Uh, and she's not nearly as outspoken as some of them, like you said, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, and others.
Right.
Um, I think he views her as a soft target because she's not as outspoken. He figures he can rile up people, and it's probably also compounded with the fact of that bullshit story of the Somalis
Very. Yeah.
with the fraud in the daycare centers, even though it was proven not to have anything to do with Somalis. It was Americans, it was white people, and it's 5 or 6 years old or some bullshit like that. But that story is out there, so she's an easy target, and his brain that is very severely compromised, if you ask me. They're saying bad things about Somalis in the news. She's from Somalia. I can make a connection.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, that's
better
how his
attack her.
brain works. That's how his brain works. But if he was hoping to intimidate or scare Ilhan Omar, if you saw the video, it didn't pan out that way because she was ready. She raised her hand. She was ready to punch that motherfucker, and she swore and she stood strong and she said, "Fuck it, I'm going to finish this speech." So they didn't do very well in intimidating her. And the clown that did it is just an absolute fuck up. If you look at his background, certainly a fuck, just a fuck up as a human being. Been married and divorced twice. Um, I have to question the decision making of the two women that decided to marry him at one point. They can't be too bright. But um, so Donald Trump shows no sympathy for that, but we're all supposed to cry if it's something that happens to a Republican. If that had been Donald Trump and he got sprayed with something, that motherfucker would be down on the ground screaming his head off, hoping for help. And Ilhan Omar was ready to take the fucker on. And so everything Donald Trump tries doesn't really work, and no one can suggest that he didn't incite this guy to do it. Why apple cider vinegar? And I tend to think you're right because I heard somebody report that it was weird. It smelled like vinegar, which would make sense if it was vinegar. Um, I don't know if there's some symbolism for that or what, but it was
No
stupid.
idea. Other than, well, it the like I said, probably because it stinks. Vinegar has got a very distinct odor that lingers, and it was probably something he had on hand at his house. Something he had, he didn't have to go out and get anything to do this. He was probably something he looked around, what do I have that I can use?
I wonder if it's something, I don't know anything about Somali food, but I know there have been people who live in places. The Somali food is very pungent, or very fragrant, as I understand it. I don't have personal experience with it,
I
um,
don't either.
but racist will say, I've heard racists say this about Somali people. Well, they smell, and I didn't understand what they meant by that because I know Somali people. I've never never known that to be. Was that just a way to make his point about that racist concept? I don't know.
Could be. I mean, you're dealing with somebody who's probably mentally unwell. He's got to be unbalanced in some way in order to do something like this. Egged on by Donald Trump, maybe indirectly, because I guarantee you Donald Trump didn't know this guy. They didn't, tell him to go do it directly.
No, of course
But
not.
but because Donald Trump says things like what he said about her coming from a place that could it even be called a country, and I guarantee you Donald Trump couldn't find Somalia on a map if he tried.
No.
Hell, Donald Trump couldn't find Somalia on a map if every other country was colored in and it was the only one left blank. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Donald Trump is not the
But
brightest motherfucker in the world.
but he says these things, and then you get dumb fucks like this deciding that they're going to go do something because, well, this is an enemy of Donald Trump's, and I got to go protect him. I've said it before. Being convinced that a billionaire is out to do anything for you or gives a shit about you is like being convinced the stripper actually likes you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have any question whether or not that's true, remember 1,000 people were found guilty of inciting an insurrection on January 6, 2021. That was all at the behest of Donald Trump. As much as Donald Trump wants to say he didn't, it's very clear. It's like the shooting of Alex Preddy. It's right there in video. It's not hard to figure out unless you're a dumbass or a liar. And This is what he does. I mean, we don't hear about a lot of stuff, but when he calls out judges or other politicians, they said they said that the threats on members of Congress is up like 45%. They're getting 45% more threats on members of Congress, and that's all because of Donald Trump. It's completely about Donald Trump. The Republicans are starting to see they're losing now, so they're getting desperate and they're going to try to intimidate anybody they can if they think it's beneficial to them.
Yeah, one of the things I said, I mentioned it when British John was on live last night. When it comes time for them to move on Donald Trump, because I think they are starting to come to terms that they are going to have to make a move at some point to save their own skins. It's going to be a dog pile, and Donald Trump is going to be caught off guard.
And he's not going to be able to pull out of that. Once everybody fall drops away, he's going to be in trouble. He's already in trouble because his popularity is flailing so much. It's he's down in the 20s and 30s for a lot of uh, popularity on all the different categories that he was claiming were his strong points: economy, um, immigration. He's losing on all these things. And as he loses more and more popularity, he's going to lose and lose the influence over those members of Congress.
Oh yeah, definitely. I saw a couple interesting polls, and we don't trust polls because they can be bullshit. Like one of them I want to talk about that was bullshit. Um, but one I saw talking about him going to Iowa. Yes, well, what would be 2 days ago as you're listening to this on Tuesday, where he was talking economics. They said he's got almost a 60% disapproval rating on the economy.
Right.
Well, that's horrendous. But again, don't trust polls. But there was a poll he released that was from a paid or one of those emails they send out, one of the fundraising emails. Well, donate to our campaign. You're a great American for doing it, and take our survey. Tell us what you think about Donald Trump. And somebody that I follow on TikTok, I can't remember who it was, actually took the survey, and it had a whole bunch of questions in there like, are you a man, are you a woman, or are you insane? And are you an American, or are you an illegal, or are you a criminal, or something like that? Like it was that bad, right? And
Right.
if you're not an American, don't continue to take the survey or whatever. So they were cherry picking the people they got, and then they showed the results, and he still only had a 67% approval rating with that poll from people that were donating to his campaign or to
67% of those people who donate to it.
were approving of
Wow.
what he was doing. Yeah, that were donating to whatever he was fundraising for. And how is he fundraising? Because he can't run for anything. Although here in Iowa on Tuesday, he asked again. He goes, "Oh, we had so much fun running the second time. We decided to do it a third, and should we do it a fourth?" And he was met with applause and cheers from the small venue that had dozens of people. I don't even know if it held a couple hundred people. It wasn't a huge gathering.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. There was some booze though when he was trying to sell them on the economy, how great it is, and the people in Iowa are suffering just as much as anybody else, if not more so. And they were booing him, and then he said, "Well, these people are just paid instigators. They're sickos." That's exactly what he said to the crowd. So I'm wondering how they responded to that, because to be honest with you, if he had a couple hundred people in Iowa, he probably paid half of them himself to get him out there to cheer and carry the sign so he looks good.
I would 100% believe that. I think, like we talked about on the live, it wouldn't surprise me if everybody at the restaurant he was at, which, if you're from Iowa and you're familiar with the Des Moines area, you've heard of the Machine Shed restaurant in I think it's in Clive. Um, it's pretty well known. That's where they went.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if they staged it so it was full of Trump supporting people, or at least people who were willing to, for a few bucks, cheer and, support him. Because every accusation is a confession. He's accusing the left of doing those kind of things. And the reason he probably accuses us is because they're doing it themselves.
When you say that under normal circumstances, I would say that's crazy. Why would somebody doing something unsavory accuse somebody else of doing the same thing unsavory? Because if I'm doing something unsavory, that's the last motherfucking thing I want to talk about. I don't even want that in people's minds. I just want to do it and have nobody find out. But that's how simple-minded he is. He thinks he's slick by distracting, by pointing everything the other way. Um, Now, you've been talking about Iowa because that's your home state and the possibility of it turning blue. And that would suggest that there's a different vibe with the state of Iowa, which has been red for Donald Trump. Do you sense that? Do you still feel that there's some changes happening in Iowa?
I do. Now, this is the problem we're going to have. There's going to be obviously primaries here in Iowa.
Hmm.
I think Rob Sand, who is currently our state auditor, has got a great chance of becoming the next governor. He's talking about doing a lot. One of the things, and I've seen some of the videos from the events he goes to, that now they were released by him by his account. So take it for what it's worth, where he's
Right.
talking to people who claim to be Trump or were Trump supporters. And Rob Sanders out talking about, I'm not out to just serve Republicans or just serve Democrats. We got to reach across the aisle and be a leader for everybody and put Iowa, first, et cetera. And he's saying all the right things, and you're seeing Republicans react to it. But he's also the only statewide elected Democrat right now in any office. And he won the last time when we lost everything statewide. Like we
Right.
had a attorney general that was a Democrat prior to our current attorney general, who was elected as a Democrat. And Rob Sand was the only one to get reelected. He's got a good chance, I think, of becoming governor. The problem is going to be what happens if he doesn't win the primary. I'm worried about, not that he wouldn't win. I still think he's going to win the primary. But on the off chance he doesn't, are we going to have a situation like we see with Democrats all the time, where fuck it, my guy didn't win, and now we're not going to put the effort in. And
Yeah.
I think Rob Sand could be the guy to bring the governor's mansion back under Democratic control and possibly bring. I don't know if he will have enough momentum to flip the legislature by himself, but he could at least bring some of the races along with him. And I think we could end up with potentially two um, federal members of the House of Representatives, two members of Congress, uh, probably districts 1 and 3, I think, have the best chance of flipping. Two could be an outside chance, but that's a little slimmer. And we may even have a Democratic senator.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Now, who is primarying Rob Sand? Is it somebody of note? Is it somebody who's got a chance?
I've seen a few names, but nobody is sticking out that I'm overly familiar with
Okay.
as being, uh, you know, bigger names. Um, I was on, I was talking in somebody's live, just in the comments on TikTok, and we were talking politics, and I threw out this idea that um, when it comes to the next presidential candidate, it could be somebody that we haven't even thought of. I said, hell, if Rob Sand flips Iowa and he takes it by 70% and drags the state house with him on his way across the finish line, maybe it's something where he's in the mix now.
Yeah.
Not I would hate to lose him as governor, but I'm throwing it out that we don't know what 28 is going to bring. It's too far away to have any sort of an idea of what could happen.
Yeah. People keep telling me that it's definitely going to be Gavin Newsom, and I think you and I agree that it could be. It could be, and I'm not opposed to Gavin Newsom as being the nominee for the Democratic Party. It's just so early. Um, it's too early to peak, and he's obviously peaked. He's a smart guy, but I get a feeling that in 2028 we are going to be. Well, I know we're going to have more millennials and Gen Zs than anybody voting for the 2028 elections. And I just have a feeling that those young people are a little sick and tired of fucking establishment folks, and they might see him as too establishment.
Yeah, he definitely could come off as too establishment. He's got his own skeletons. He's got his own problems. And one of the things he's doing right now is the best thing he can do to help the Democrats. He's taking all the heat. Everyone is focused on Gavin Newsom right now as being the the guy, right? And he's
Right.
drawing attention to himself. You know, Donald Trump is focused on him and other people are focused on him. Letting the other people who are out there, win their races and do the things they need to do to raise their stature as it comes up. We don't know what it's going to bring. And I think to appeal to the younger crowd, you are going to need um, another FDR style candidate. I've talked about it before. Somebody having
Yeah.
like that progressive message, raising the minimum wage, uh, going back to it being a livable wage, talking about universal health care and maybe even universal basic income, and all of those kind of things. Something really progressive, because you're going to need that hard shift to the left to counter the shift to the right we've had. That pendulum is going to need to swing hard left. And like an FDR style candidate would be a good move. I just don't know if the Democrats are going to be willing to pull it off.
Yeah. Well, as long as the establishment is in power, it may be tough. But if you're looking at a candidate, I said Mark Kelly might be a prospect, but he's an older white guy. If you're looking for a candidate who's a millennial, that might be a strong candidate, assuming he wins in 2026, John Ossoff might fit the bill. I keep watching him. He's very articulate, very smart, very measured. He's a good-looking guy. He's 38 years old. He's the same age as my son, so he's a millennial. Um, if the young people are going to have to try to find somebody to appeal to them, it's going to be somebody like that of that age.
Yeah, I think you're right. Considering uh, the last time we had a younger president, I mean, Obama wasn't necessarily old, but I think he was in his 40s. I think wasn't he in his late 40s when he took office?
Yeah,
Clinton
he's
was
the
in his
same age as me.
40s.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they're all up there. And of course, you got Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Um, I think we're going to have to go with somebody younger. And I know the minimum age is 35. So if you're talking Ossoff is 38, he'd be 40 come 2028, maybe 41, depending on when his birthday is. That'd be perfect. You have somebody who's lived through the same shit we've all lived through with a younger perspective on how it affects them as a younger person. Um, it would be a good move toward capturing the young vote. The worst thing they could do is run out another old establishment Democrat. Somebody, I don't want to say, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but even Gavin Newsom, who's, I think he's up there as an elder Gen X. I don't think he's a
right.
boomer, but he's Gen
Let me.
X. Like, I think he's in his upper 50s. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but
Well, let me check here. He's 58. He's not that much younger than me.
right.
He's like
I think
6 years younger than me.
right. That would be potentially a bad choice. Maybe not just on age alone, but it would make it harder for him to message to that younger demographic, I think, because we've seen this song and dance before of the older politician.
Well, and if I'm a Democrat, there's two things I'm going to do. First of all, they think I'm weak. They think the Democrats are weak because that's how they are. They are weak. There's a quick way to fix this whole situation. Get rid of the weak leadership, put strong leadership in. That'll change the perception of the Democratic Party very quickly, at least enough to get people to respect them a little bit more. And then, like we've talked about this before too, where the Democrats missed out in 2024 is they talked about the economy, but they didn't address the real problem. And I've mentioned this many times, and I'm going to keep mentioning it. The real problem isn't the stock market, isn't the job market, it isn't the GDP. It's the fact that we have young people like your age and younger that get saddled with all kinds of debt for school and then don't make enough money to buy anything, to rent an apartment, to buy a house, to buy a car. And that is a disastrous future for this country if that continues that way. Because when I'm dead and the younger people are doing what they're doing and they can't afford anything, you don't have an economy. That has to be addressed, and it has to be somebody that can make those young people listen. I'm going to tell you right now, if you can tell these young people, we're going to help you with your ridiculous debt on overpriced college degrees, and we're going to make sure you make more money and make sure things are more affordable, you're going to win because they're the majority of the people that are going to be voting in 2028, millennials and Gen Z, and the Democrats just shit the bed when they were coming out in 2024. They didn't get it.
Yeah. And when you talk about student loans, I'm going to throw this out there. For the Republicans out there that may be listening, although most of them avoid this podcast, when we talk about forgiving student loans, you guys always say, well, I paid mine, you should pay yours. It's not about willingness to pay for a lot of people. I mean, I've seen post after post after post of people saying, I've made my payments for 20 years. The one guy, I can't remember how he said they paid over $100,000 on the student loans for it was either him or his wife for 20 years. They had only made a dent in principal of $10,000 after
Yeah,
20 years. If you bought a house on a 30-year mortgage and after 20 years you'd only made $10,000 in equity, you'd be flipping you'd go in and flip a table at a bank or something. You'd go crazy.
yeah,
You're no closer to paying these loans off than they were the day they took them out. And that's the problem. And we need to do more, the Democrats do, about fixing those issues for people, the being able to afford food and being able to afford rent and groceries and car payments. I mean, recently I had to deal with a car repair issue, and I was debating between buying a different vehicle and fixing my car. And ultimately, I decided to fix up the vehicle I had because it was paid off. Sure, the repair was going to be probably more expensive than the vehicle was worth, but then I didn't have to deal with a car payment.
right.
I'm looking at a vehicle that was 8 years old, I think, maybe 8 or 9 years old, had 100,000 miles on it. They were talking about putting me into it for $200 a month payment, 250 for 4 years. Now, I got thinking back. I bought a car, a 1 year old car way back in 2008. It had 6,000 miles on it, or no, 30,000. I don't know. It was way less miles anyway. It was ridiculously low. 1 year old. I had at the time horrible credit. I was about paying 30% interest to get the loan, and they were able to get me into that car for a $300 a month payment.
Right.
Now, I realize inflation and stuff was so much different, but how am I now, 15 years later, looking at a car, that's way older, 100,000 miles, and you're talking a $200 a month payment? That's ridiculous. Cars and things, we need to figure out a way to lower the price or help people out or make it more affordable, something. Because if we're not out buying cars, if people my age are going, well, yeah, we can't afford to buy something new. We're just going to keep fixing up this old stuff. It's going to eventually hit the economy. Right now, you know, a section of the baby boomers and the Gen Xers are the ones propping up, like the auto industry and other places
Right.
because they can afford it.
Well, they can afford it, and they're dying too. So you would hope the car industry and all other industries realize you're riding the gravy train now, but it's coming to an end just by virtue of attrition. People are going to die, and those people that have money are not going to be able to buy your shit. And you know, it's not just inflation that's the problem. There's two problems, and they're working against themselves. There's inflation, everything gets higher, everything gets more expensive, like cars, like everything else, but the income has stagnated. Prices are going up, you're not making any more money. So then it becomes more expensive and more difficult. And that is a huge problem. You talked about universal income. Tell tell people what that means. A lot of people think, well, that's crazy. They're just going to give you money every month, possibly, and there may be a good reason for it for the economy. It may pay dividends to the government if they did that sort of thing. But kind of explain what uh, the universal income thing is.
Now, I'm not an expert by any means on universal basic income. I used to work with a guy who knew way more than I did. He was the one, you know, hell, I haven't worked with him in coming up on 5, 6 years, but he used to tell me about different politicians who had this as something they wanted to do. The idea being that they would up the taxes on the corporations and the wealthy
Oh my
and
God,
give,
not that.
oh, yeah, I know, worst thing in the world, right? But they would give every American citizen, every American, I believe it was adult citizen, an amount of money. And this is where they differ depending on who you're talking to. Some people said it would be whatever the amount they say is the poverty line per year. Some people say it would be more, double or whatever. They haven't come up with, no, they haven't agreed on how much money. And obviously, they haven't even agreed to do this, but that they would give every American adult X amount of dollars every month. And that should be the amount of money needed to cover your basic bills. It would cover your rent, your food, and everything else needed to be able to survive. So you wouldn't be tied to a job. Because how many people do you know that are working a job that are stuck? Because
Well,
I
yeah.
can't quit my job because I got rent due, I got mortgage due, I got car payment due, and if I go to someplace else, there's no guarantee I'm going to get the same money I'm making, or I'm going to keep the same hours, or, there's so many people that get stuck in this routine that if you gave people a straight amount of money, and for those that didn't need it, that were already making more than enough money, they'd still get it. Everybody would get it, regardless of income status. It wouldn't be just well, you have to qualify. And what my friend or coworker was saying about it was it would encourage people if they didn't have to work to, they weren't out picking up a job because they needed one to pay all their bills. They may have more freedom to go pursue other interests. Um, you know, sure, maybe they wouldn't be working at your local grocery store or your local gas station. Maybe that's when they go back to college. Maybe that's when they actually look into, opening up a store and selling their artwork or what have you. It would be a way for people to have access to uh their bills being paid, and it would make it easier for the lower classes to get back into that idea of the American dream.
Well, and I have to believe it doesn't. It doesn't suggest that everybody would get this basic income, universal income, and then just sit on their ass all day. That's what the Republicans will say they will do. Um, People are stuck in jobs, yes, but there are people with two and three jobs and still barely getting by. I think more than going off into entrepreneurial things or experiencing life, which would be a nice thing. It'd be nice to have some positivity in this country. It would cause people to feel a little relief and be able to live their lives. It would also put more money into the system. People now, if you don't want to give, if you gave them the universal income, um, that would be a quick fix to our income problem in this country.
Yes, it
You
would.
got to, if people need to make more money in this country in order to keep the country flowing, you got to get every company to agree to do it and get it done. That's going to take some time. It could take 10 years to do this. Universal basic income would be a substitute for that and give people more money. That's what I've always said about the loan forgiveness and all this stuff, or paying people more money. The two things when you pay people more money that happen is they pay more taxes, which is a good thing, and they buy more shit, which is excellent for the economy. Where we're at right now is people, when the boomers die and the Gen Xers die, they aren't going to be paying that much taxes because they don't make enough money. They aren't going to be buying shit. So we're going to have a country whose economy and government is struggling financially because there isn't enough money moving around. Um, you could take the trillions of dollars that you're handing to wealthy people who don't need it and put it in the hands of the middle class, the backbone of this country, and start money flowing. We saw what happened when Biden handed out money during COVID, and how that kind of spurred on the economy. That should have been a red flag to everybody in politics saying, hey, if we just water our crops, meaning the middle class, they'll fucking grow and they'll get better. Republicans fight against that, but the universal, I'm sure there's people out there saying, oh, that's just lazy. We just want to get people not working. Okay, well, you're going to fucking get AI anyway, so maybe you have to do it because there aren't the jobs that people would normally be able to get.
Well, yeah, that's always been when it comes to giving people, something like a universal basic income. Well, you just don't want people to work. One of the things that why you could get Republicans, or at least some Republicans, on board is what is the one thing Republicans like to talk about when it comes to uh, people getting government assistance of any kind? Well, they didn't earn it. They don't deserve it. If you're saying the only qualifications are to be an American citizen and to be 18 and period, you get it. It'd be a little easier to sell to certain areas of the country because, yeah, you're just going to get it. It's not a matter of, well, you have to earn it or whatever. And if you're making $150,000 a year and you're getting by and you're living life and they're going to give you an extra, I don't know. Let's say it's 3,000 a month. Let's say it's 2,000 a month, whatever that number is. And you don't need it and you decide to put it on something and you save it for a year and you go out and buy a fancy vacation.
Right.
Cool. But you're still putting the money in the economy at the end of the day. And when it comes to helping out the lower and the middle classes, all of that help becomes economic multipliers. So, like with food stamps, you give people food stamp money who can't afford to go get their groceries. They go to the grocery store. They spend that money at the grocery store. Well, now the grocery store, they've made some profit on that money. They take their profits, they turn around and they pay their employee.
Right.
They pay their employees. Their employees take that paycheck. They go spend that money somewhere else. That business makes some money. They paid their employees. It grows the economy. That's why every time, and usually around February, March, people talk about how the economy upticks. Well, it picks up because of tax season. When the lower and the middle classes, the group that, again, some of the Republicans like to complain about for getting the large tax refunds, they get their rebate money and it hits their account and it's gone in, a week and a half.
Yeah.
But they spurred the economy by doing it. And it's, the money floats back around to multiple businesses. Even if they spent it all at one place, it ends up working its way through the system. Putting the money in the hands of the people who are driving the economy makes everybody more money.
Well, and a good thing to consider too is if you've got universal basic income, we don't need SNAP anymore. We don't need the
Potentially.
welfare social the security nets there. Um, I don't know if that's a realistic thing to think about, but like you said before, when we've gone so far right and people are struggling so much, usually when you come out of that, like in the Depression into FDR, then people seem more accepting of those things. I mean, universal basic income sounds like something Republicans wouldn't go for. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of red hat motherfuckers in Alabama, in Florida, in Tennessee, in Texas that would love the fuck out of that. And, you
Oh yeah.
know, you wouldn't have to worry about fraud anymore because if you're a human and you're a certain age, you get the money. There is no issue with fraud. It's not like you can game the system. You get what you get, and if it doesn't work for you, too fucking bad. But at least you had some place to start. Will there be
Yeah.
people spending it on drugs and stuff? Yeah, but there are people that were giving $1 trillion fucking tax breaks with the rich that are doing fucked up shit with the money, and they're certainly not putting it back in the economy.
Right. We've dealt with trickle down economics for 40 plus years. The idea that you put the money in the hands of the job creators and it's going to somehow work its way through the system down to the employee. It never
Right.
works that way. The best thing you can do is to tax the hell out of the rich and give them incentives, all kinds of tax incentives for paying better. I think companies, there should be something in the tax code where you get maybe not even, maybe even if it's a penalty or something, or maybe it's a tax break. I don't know which way you want to do it. Either a tax break if like over a certain percentage of your employees do not need government assistance, or maybe it's a tax penalty if over a certain percentage are on government assistance. Because you have places like Walmart, the largest retailer in the world, and I don't remember the exact percentage of their employees in the United States that qualify, but it's ridiculously high for somebody that for a company that brings in the kind of money Walmart does. They don't want to pay their employees. They let them rely on the government.
Yeah. Yeah, and they do it on purpose. I mean, they know
Yeah.
they can get away with it, so they do it. I mean, it's not like Walmart's not making profit. They're making billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they just choose to pay people poorly. You know, we haven't had a raise to the minimum wage for 20 years or whatever it is, and this is all Republicans trying to hold everybody down in the middle class. But it's going to bite them in the ass if they continue to do it because, as we said, we're getting a turnover in the demographics. Old people are dying. They've got money because they had jobs and they have retirements and stuff. Now we got the millennials and Gen Zs. If no one's going to be out there to buy it, if I'm an oligarch and I have a big company and I'm trying to sell shit, I would be on board with paying more taxes because I know in the end I'm going to get fucking creamed because I got nobody buying my shit anymore. Eventually, you would hope they'd be far-sighted enough to understand that, but up to this point, it seems like it's I want all I want now. I'm going to take everything now and fuck the future. But that's going to bite them in the ass at some point.
Well, right. And the thing people forget about when we talk about like increasing the taxes on the wealthy, back at one point during the height of what a lot of people think of as the golden age for America, and I don't know if that's the right terminology, but you talk post World War II, probably up to Reagan,
Right.
where there was actually the American dream. And, you know, you had people going out, they were working a job, didn't matter what the job was. They could support a family of four on whatever they made. You know, they could go out and get a car, they could feed their family, etc. They didn't need to work themselves to death. But the rich were being taxed at like 90 to 95% tax rate. But that was their rate. That wasn't what they paid in taxes. There were all kinds of incentives, tax cuts and uh,
Write
credits
offs.
and write-offs, et cetera, for um, hey, I'm a manufacturer. I got a plant in Atlanta. Well, I'm going to open up one in Savannah too, and now
Right.
I've got a second factory. Or my plant's in Atlanta. I'm gonna expand the plant, and I'm gonna put on another line and pump out more product. And they got tax write-offs, but that spurs the economy because they're, you know, as we were talking about, they're going out, they're spending their money with a contractor to build the plant, and they got to pay people to work the plant and do all of those things. just because we're talking about a tax rate of 90% doesn't mean they would ultimately pay 90%. The problem is right now, they're sitting at about 37% tax rate.
Right.
And after they get all their discounts and their tax credits and their deductions and everything else, in some cases, they are paying less than the bottom percentages are paying in total taxes that don't have access to those credits and deductions, et cetera.
Exactly. Well, as people are listening to this, it's the 29th of January. On January 31st, 2 days away, they could shut this country down. Donald Trump fucks up again. You know, he had money going to DHS. It passed the House, then it was going to go to the Senate, and who knows how that was all going to play out. But Donald Trump fucks up. People are pissed off about DHS even more than they were before. And now Republicans and Democrats are going, you got to take that out of there. We're not passing it. How likely do you think it is that they're going to come up with something in 2 days and not have the country shut down?
I'm thinking there's going to be a shutdown. Um,
Yeah, I do too.
I don't think they come to an agreement because the House has told the Senate, from what I understand, that if they take out the funding for DHS, it will not pass the House.
Right.
Uh, and any changes made to the bill would have to go back to the House for passage. So if they take out ICE funding and Democrats want to cut out some ICE funding beyond, uh, this is all you know, they want to fund the government, sure, and keep everything open. In exchange for cutting ICE funding, they want to put more security factors in place with ICE. They want to end the ICE roaming raid thing that they got going on, where they're just wandering the streets, basically going door to door, um, chasing anybody down that they can find. Um,
Yeah.
they want to put in more stringent penalties and things for not following the law. The way I understand it, they want to put more wording and directives in there about ICE being forced to actually get judicial warrants signed off by a judge in order to do half of what they want, and all these things.
Let me
And
ask you about that real. Let me ask you about that real quick. They make a policy. We don't need a warrant. We're just going to go in your house. A policy is well and good, but the Constitution says otherwise. You can't
yes,
override the fucking Constitution with a policy. How about just tell them to stick to the Constitution like you're supposed to, as opposed to put something in saying you can't do this anymore? You couldn't do it in the first place.
well, I think, and this is my interpretation of it from a couple articles I've read, is not only do they want to put it in writing saying you can't do this, but increase the penalties for going against it. So instead of saying, just follow it the way it's supposed to, which they should anyway, now saying, hey, motherfucker, if you keep doing this, you know, you could be facing up to, instead of, and I don't know what the penalty is right now, but if it was 5 years, maybe now they made it 25 years. And if the statute of limitations was 2 years, maybe they're going to extend that statute of limitations into the next term because, as we've talked about before, there's probably going to be our own version of the Nuremberg trials after this administration is gone. There's
Yeah.
going to be court cases. There's going to be people held accountable. I'm just following orders was is not going to be accepted. And if they can get this passed with additional penalties for them not following the law, it's just going to make it that much worse for these ICE agents on the backside when Republicans are finally out of power.
I've heard a couple of other demands that maybe Democrats want in order to cut a deal. And those demands were fire Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller. I don't know how they would feel about that, but it sounds like Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller are kind of sitting precariously at this point.
They both are. Donald Trump is still kind of defending Kristi Noem.
Yeah.
and she's thrown Stephen Miller under the bus. Now, I can tell in between the two, Donald Donald Trump will probably listen to Kristi Noem more than Stephen Miller,
You think so?
uh, mostly because she's a woman,
Yeah,
not
maybe.
because of necessarily the fact that he values her opinion more, but you say the right thing to Donald Trump, and if a woman's saying it to him,
Yeah.
well, it's gonna make a difference versus uh, the walking jump scare that is Stephen Miller.
Well, that would be interesting if Stephen Miller ends up getting fired. And I said earlier, I can tell that he's pretty nervous at this point because he came out and said, well, there may have been some protocol violations in this. Getting him to admit that something was wrong and stepping back. I mean, he's worse than Donald Trump in terms of being a Nazi and doubling down and tripling down and continuing to try to gaslight. So I think Steve is going through some things at this point.
I think he's trying to cover his ass and trying to get ahead of it so that he doesn't end up on the outs. And I don't I don't know if it's going to work because Donald Trump is looking for a scapegoat here. And I think if the right advisor gets to him and says, "Well, Stephen Miller's hated more than Kristi Noem in this country," which is probably true,
Six of one, half a dozen of the other.
true, but a lot of people, from what I'm seeing from other creators and stuff, they're blaming Stephen Miller for the ideas that Donald Trump is coming up with that then like people like Kristi Noem are going along with versus she's being the brains coming up with the stuff on her own. Um,
Well,
you get the
well,
right advisor. Go ahead.
yeah, but then who does he get his ideas from if Stephen Miller's not there anymore?
Oh, who the fuck knows? Who the
Bring
fuck
Elon
knows?
back.
Oh God. I mean, that's the problem with Donald Trump. And he doesn't have an original thought in his head anymore. He has
No.
vague ideas of what he's supposed to say when he goes out and he gives these speeches. Um, and he's just listening to whoever is around him at this point. And the right person, the right advisor will probably convince him to either get rid of Noam, to get rid of Stephen Miller, or to get rid of them both to try to save his image going into the 2026 midterms. He is terrified of losing the midterms. And newsflash, Donnie, the only thing you could probably do that might save the Republican Party in the midterms is
I?
die.
Yeah. And I don't think that would
That's
save
about
him
it.
either. I don't think that would
Well,
save the Republicans because all the Republicans that stood with Donald Trump, I'm a firm believer that when Donald Trump is no more, however that might occur, that there's going to be a flood of like a broken cesspool pipe of all the shit. You said before it's going to be a monkey pile or a dog pile on Donald Trump, and a
mhm.
lot of evidence is going to come out, whether it be Epstein or any of the other things he's involved in. Anybody that stood too close to Donnie's going to have that sewage smell on them.
Oh, definitely. And I think I've said it before. When I said there's going to be a dog pile, when they decide to move away from Donald Trump, one of the things I've been discussing in my lives and on my podcast, I think what's going to happen, because in this, my thought process started with, uh, what's his name? Representative Bacon from Omaha.
Don
Is it
Bacon,
Don
yeah,
Bacon? Yeah.
yeah.
He said that if Donald Trump uses the military in Greenland, they had the votes to impeach and remove him. He said that publicly. So I started thinking about it. And what I think would happen in that situation is there wouldn't be a long impeachment inquiry or things like that. They would get up and go, Mr. Speaker, I've got a thing to vote on right here. It's articles of impeachment on Donald Trump. And I think they are going to corner Mike Johnson to make him bring it to the floor because they will already have the votes to remove Mike Johnson if he tries any bullshit. Let the he's and that once it like once that vote, because you've seen how they vote in the House, right? They leave it
Right.
open and they can change their vote back and forth on a lot of these things until they close voting.
Right.
Once they cross that 218 to impeach him, I think you're going to see all the no votes start to flip, except his most ardent supporters. You're probably going to see 70, 75, maybe 80% the entire House voting on this thing. And I had this idea that, normally, like when they've impeached him before, it was days before they walked the uh, articles over in a briefcase to the Senate
Right.
and, they drug it out. Now, I think you're going to see a mad dash from the House to the Senate, and they're probably already going to have John Roberts there before they even vote on the articles, and they're going to be ready. They're going to walk in. It's going to be a quick trial, maybe a few hours tops, and they're going to move for summary conviction. And it's going to again be a dog pile by the Republicans because when they make that move, I am 100% convinced that it's going to succeed. If the Republicans do it themselves,
Right.
that they are going to have all their ducks in a row to get him out and give him as little time as possible to publicly bash them, to try to spin it, to get any a sort of narrative going, and for any sort of a response. Because if he thinks maybe he can direct the military to save him or something, they're going to try to have everything going. And it wouldn't surprise me if JD Vance is in on it and he's right there ready to take the oath of office within seconds. So then the military would have to listen to him and not Donnie.
Well, and you almost have to do it that way because of what you said. Donald Trump is, if that actually happens, where the Republicans instigate an impeachment, while that's going on, however long or however short that is, it's going to get ugly. Donald Trump is going to be freaking the fuck out. Truth Social will be burning down. He'll be sending out interviews, and he'll just be going nuts. Um, and I think that would really take him aback. He knows the Democrats are going to impeach him, but if the Republicans made that move, he would freak the fuck out. And then after it's done, it will be interesting. I can see Donald Trump imitating uh, what's his name, Baker, the uh, the religious guy that the minister that got arrested for fraud, Jim Baker. Remember him?
Oh yeah.
Jim and Tammy Baker. They went in to get him out of his office. You know where they found him? He was curled up in the fetal position underneath his desk. That's where Donald Trump would be. He'd be sucking his thumb and shitting his pants. Let me ask you this, though, because people are going to say, when you say the Republicans impeaching him, there are people out there right now. I swear to God, I know this for a fact. They're going, that will never happen. The Republicans will never do that. What makes you think that that's a possibility?
Uh, Multiple things. One, what do politicians care about more than anything else? Their own
Get
power.
elected. Right.
Right. Donald Trump is fucking everything up. And they're worried about getting elected in 26 or later this year in the midterms. They're worried about having a shot in 28. They're worried about having a shot in a generation. And
Right.
uh, when Don Bacon came out and said they have the votes to impeach and remove, it told me that what I've been saying all along is right. That they're having closed door meetings, that they're talking behind Donald Trump's back, going, okay, if he really does this, if he does that, when is it a bridge too far? If I bring up articles of impeachment, who would support me because he did X, Y, and Z? They're having the discussion. And if they're trying to save their party, if they're trying to save their jobs, I think that eventually there is going to come something, whether that's these two unfortunate shootings in Minneapolis. And depending on what response comes out and who gets fired and if it actually calms things down, or if he ramps it up, if he sends the military into Venezuela, if he decides to actually put the military and put boots on the ground in Greenland, Um, who knows what he may try to do? Hell, the right picture could come out of the Epstein files, and they could go, "Okay, here's our golden ticket,"
Yeah.
and they make that move. Their strategy, they're looking at their strategy for long term, going one way or the other. Donald Trump can't be president after January 20th, 29. We need a way around him. Now they're all hoping for the Big Mac to get him, just like we are,
Oh, no
for a
doubt.
different reason. They know he will burn that party down to the ground around them.
Right.
And I think they're just waiting for what they think is the perfect moment because, as I've talked about on here before, they're worried about that 30% of the MAGA voting or the 30% of the Republican base, those hardcore MAGAs, the ones that are always in comment sections. That's my president. He's what I voted for. Trump 2028, Trump for life, those kind of people
Right.
that they want something concrete without a doubt, and they want to show them that they're united against Donald Trump. Because if it's bad enough, and I think the Epstein files is probably going to be one of the few things where it would be that they could still keep those MAGA voters voting Republican in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem they're having now, they're scared of that 30%, but now they're the fucking the 70%. You
Yeah,
got to pick and choose which one's more important to you, and obviously the 70% would be uh, more important to you. Now, you and I have been talking about this since he got elected, about the prospect of the Republicans actually impeaching him. And people have always said that will never happen, that will never happen. And maybe it won't, but um, I'm looking at the Republicans, and they only have so many ways to save themselves, and getting rid of Donald Trump is the most important one. Um, aren't you a little? I'm what I'm taken aback by is it's taken this long to do it. I thought it would happen before then. And then they say, well, going with boots on the ground into Greenland, that's the red line. Killing people on the streets, not the red line. Tariffs and taking the economy, not a red line. It's amazing to me that that's the one thing that's triggering them, and that tells me that not only do we have members of Congress and politicians around the country, Republicans that are angry and worried about Donald Trump, we've got world leaders all around the world that are seeing things that could happen here that could impact them, maybe cause a war. I think we've got oligarchs looking at what's going on and some of the little tendencies in the economy where things are going to blow up. I think he's got everybody against him right now. His own politicians, the oligarchs are getting a little fucking hinky about this, and world leaders are ready to just cut us off at the knees and fucking leave us behind and forget about us. There's a lot of people pushing to get rid of Donald Trump at this point.
yeah, I think that's part of it, but that's not all of it. I think the reason Greenland is the bridge too far, even though he effectively did the same thing with Venezuela, Venezuela is not an ally.
No.
Um, Greenland is fucking with NATO and fucking with our allies with group boots on the ground against an ally is going to be a bridge too far because it is something that we can't come back from, at least not easily, right?
Right.
That it would take a lot for our allies to ever trust us again after that. Whereas they're looking at it, and I could be wrong on their assessment. They're saying, yeah, we've had a couple people die. That was unfortunate in Minnesota. That's their perspective, not mine. But they're looking at it that way, going, but we remove Donald Trump, we remove Christy Nome, we shake up ICE a little bit, and we put somebody else in there calmer, and we can smooth it over, and we can put all the blame on Donald Trump for that. You got the economy. The economy's fucked up. You get rid of Donald Trump, you put in JD Vance, and it may take a bit, but we can recover the economy and we can still spin it that it's the Democrats' fault. That they're looking at it going, all of the other shit that he's doing, well, you and I may think it's a bridge too far, and it should be. They're looking at it as going, we can still fix that. It's not too far broken yet.
I think the fatal flaw for Donald Trump and the Republicans if they think that what's going on here in Minneapolis, they'll just be able to smooth it over and get by it. That's where the mistake is going to come because people aren't going to forget about this. We didn't forget about fucking Kent State. We didn't forget about some of the other things that happened with riots and such back in the 60s. This is one of those things that, well, there's two problems with it. Killing people on the streets, people they frown on that. But then Donald Trump doubles down and fucks up even worse, where he's pissing off his own people, saying, well, he had a gun, so he's a criminal. Anybody that has a gun in a protest, or you can't just be carrying around guns around town, or we can shoot you. A big, a big sponsor of his, the NRA, and people around him um, that are the big gun lobby and such, they aren't fucking happy right now. And Donald Trump isn't walking that back at all. He keeps saying that. And I've said to people on TikTok, I said, you worried about Obama and you worried about Biden taking away your guns? What Donald Trump said, if it's true, he essentially just took away your guns. You can't walk around with a permitted gun on your person anywhere without getting arrested or maybe shot. And I think that one is going to impact him pretty seriously.
Oh, you're 100% correct there. The fact that he basically has said we're going to come for your guns is going to be a hard pill for a lot of the Republicans to swallow. Um, and he doesn't even realize, I don't think, that he said it, but he also
No,
has said things like that in the past. He said in his first term, it was a clip of him talking to somebody about something gun related. And he said, well, maybe we should confiscate the guns first and we'll figure out due process second. He doesn't care about whether or not you have your gun rights. Not at all.
well, and
He's not a gun enthusiast.
no, he's not a gun enthusiast. His son is. He's a goofball. But the other part of it too is one of the tenets of being a fascist or a dictator is take everybody's guns so they can't fight against you. So that's right in line with his strategies if, in fact, he wants to be a dictator at this point. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities he's going to try to sell people on the fact, yeah, just give us your guns. We don't want you to have guns. That's maybe one of the things that worries him about Minneapolis and future protests. They all think Democrats are wimps and they don't have weapons and they don't do this and they don't do that. The fact that this guy had a gun is going to make them think twice now. And now more and more people are coming out with guns. You have a permit to carry in Minneapolis, and if everybody's carrying guns, it gets decidedly more dangerous if you're beating up old people or you're kidnapping kids. Somebody There's going to be a crazy fucker out there, a left-leaning crazy fucker that's just going to blow a few of them away.
Yeah, and some people were initially thinking that that's what he wanted, so he could actually invoke the Insurrection Act and say, "Well, see, we have to do this or whatever," and try to gear us toward a civil war. But I think the fact that he saw 70,000 people out there compared to his
Three,
few thousand ICE agents,
yeah.
I think they're starting to realize there's more of us than there are of them, and trying to do that isn't going to work.
No, we've talked about that. People keep saying that to me. He just wants us to fight so he can do the Insurrection Act. And I said, let him fucking try to do the Insurrection Act. Granted, it was a different circumstances, but South Korea tried it. Too many fucking people. You can't do it. That guy ended up in jail or dead, and they got somebody new in there. The Insurrection Act, people think that's the end all, be all, where Donald Trump takes over. And I just don't see it that way because there's too many people. And if you think people aren't going to come out and react, just look at Minneapolis. You know, what's happening in Minneapolis right now and the amount of people that are coming out and that it's working to an extent, That's just inspiring every other fucking city that experiences something similar to this to do the same thing. Once once it became known that we can push them back if we just come out with numbers. I mean, we've got another no kings coming up in March. We had 7 million last time. How many are we going to have this time? It's going to be fucking crazy.
Oh yeah, I don't want to fathom a guess. Considering the last one wasn't that in October as it was starting to get chilly. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't cold, but it was kind of chilly.
Yeah.
It's it's going to be huge, and they're not ready for it, right?
No.
Donald Trump isn't going to, he thinks it's going to be, uh, you know, a few hundred people or whatever. No, it's going to be massive. And if it goes like the last one, not only is it going to be massive, it's going to be peaceful, where the only violence is probably going to be, if there is any, instigated by Donald Trump and his thugs. Um, and I'm going to use his word for that because, well, that's what they are. Um, and I saw a lot of videos of these people out at these protests where they actually left the areas cleaner than before they showed up for the protest.
Yeah. Yeah.
They not only picked up their own trash, but they picked up the rest of the shit that was out there as well, made it look a little bit better. And I think that's one of the things that terrifies him. The fact that we can show up in those amount of numbers and not turn violent, speak our mind, and tell the world it's not the entire country that support this dumb fuck. You know, he doesn't know how to respond to that. And his
No.
ego doesn't know how to respond to it because, as we've talked about, he really thinks he's the best president that's ever lived, that everybody should love him the way he loves himself.
Yeah.
He really believes that.
No, he does. He does. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here in Minneapolis because I think some people think it's over now, and it's not over. That's not how Donald Trump does business. Um, and I'm afraid there's going to be something else tragic that happens because, as I've always said, Donald Trump will always fuck up. The Republicans will always fuck up. They fucked up big time in these two murders, and there's no other way to look at it. They were both cold blooded murders. But you got this little 5 year old down in a detention camp in Texas. Judge says, no, you can't deport him, which is all well and good, but get the fucking kid out of jail for fuck's sake. I heard somebody talking about this kid and says he's got a fever, he's not feeling well. I mean, that's something else that people got to jump on board and say, come on, man. I mean, the whole thing with Abrega, that was that was such a big story. This 5 year old kid or other 5 year old kids that are in these detention camps, that's a bigger story yet. These are just innocent little kids. I have a 5 year old granddaughter. I would fucking want to kill somebody if they took my kid. I would go to any lengths to get that kid back. And I think a lot of people in this country, the millennials and Gen Zs who have kids, I know I have a niece and a daughter-in-law that have new babies, and they're freaking out about this stuff. That's what I don't think a lot of people understand this. I talk to a lot of people, people in my family and outside my family, and people are just stressed to the limits. They're distraught about this stuff. They're scared. There are people going home crying because they don't know what's going to happen. You can't do that to a country without some kind of ramifications from it.
Yeah, and one of the things with them taking these kids, the reason they're doing it now, it used to be the kids were kind of off limits. Um, you know, but you
What
hear
a crazy
stories that,
thought.
yeah, but now you're hearing stories like they say, well, the mother didn't, there was one 5 year old that they had detained. I think this may be the same 5 year old, I'm not sure, that they put it at the house, like at the door. Nobody came out to claim the kid. Well, no shit. They're not going to step outside to bring the kid inside and have you guys toss him to the ground and detain them too. You know,
Yeah.
they saw the trap for what it was. Same with um, the father and the 2 year old that were arrested, detained. Apparently they did it outside the house, where the mother, who was a citizen, I think, was terrified of watching everything going in and refused to open the door to bring the kid in because she's seeing everything going on around her, with them going after the father. And of course, then the Republicans and the ICE are trying to say, well, see, they really didn't care about their kid, and oh, the kid must not be here legally or whatever. Why wouldn't they come out? Because it was a fucking trap.
Well, and yeah, it was a trap, and they had no win situation. But here's the deal. Let's say like the kid with the 5-year old. The 5-year old was standing there with his dad, right? He sees ice come up. He runs from the kid, but he's not running from the kid. He runs to the door to tell his wife, keep the door locked. He wasn't hiding in the house. He stepped away from the kid, not that far, to warn his wife to keep it locked, and then he came back, and of course, they got him both. But here's the deal. Even if what they said is true, that the parents ran away, they didn't give a shit about the kids. That still doesn't justify taking a kid away and putting him in a fucking concentration camp. At worst case, you take him to the county and the county deals with a foster parent or something, but you don't take him to a fucking detention camp.
Right. But for this group of people, cruelty is the point.
Right.
They don't they don't view, at least this is my take on it, that they don't view these immigrants as people. They're a nuisance, effectively. That's how they're treating them. And they're out just doing whatever they want because they think nothing's going to happen to them and that it's all going to be free and clear. What they don't understand is at some point Donald Trump is going to be gone. And we were talking a little bit ago about them going after Donald Trump and getting rid of him. When Donald Trump is gone, whether Republicans go after and get rid of him, or the Big Mac gets him, or what have you, it's going to be up to JD Vance to come in. JD Vance isn't going to protect these fucks. I really don't think he will,
No,
because he's
well,
going to be given strict
he's going to
orders
want
by
to
the
he's
party.
going to he's going to want to separate himself from Donald Trump, saying, "Oh, that's fucked up. Everybody thinks it's fucked up. I'm going to come in and make it better and make it more stable." So he's not going to align himself with ICE or Christy Nome or Pam Bondi or anything. He's going to want to get rid of all of them.
Right. He's going to clean house. Maybe not overtly. He may just say, okay, well, go out and let's just tell everybody you gave me your resignation. We'll make it quiet, and we're not talk about why you're doing it. Say family or whatever. We'll make it simple. He may try to protect him a little bit, that way. But when he's gone, like when Trump is gone, Vance isn't going to come out and give these people fucking pardons. He's not going to do it.
No,
He may he may not be
it would be political suicide if he did.
right. He may not go after them and get them charged and have investigations into their activities, because that would also be bad because you're going after, the former dear leader. But one way or the other, he's not going to be the one to save them. And when Donald Trump goes, it's either going to be, in my opinion, the Republicans going after him, whether it's the 25th, whether it's impeachment, or whether it is the Big Mac getting him.
Yeah,
It's going to come quick, fast, and in a hurry,
yeah, yeah.
right? It's
Well,
not going to be something where Trump is going to have time to go, oh shit, I got weeks to figure this out. I better pardon everybody who helped me. And he's not, even if he had weeks, Donald Trump isn't going to give a shit about these ICE agents on his way out the door. He's only going to be worried about saving his own ass and maybe that of his kids.
well, I can tell you this: when he was out the door on January 20th, 2021, he didn't pardon the J6ers. He didn't do it
Nope.
until he got back and he thought he could own the libtards. Donald Trump is going to be, if he gets in a situation where he's going to be impeached, he's going to be mad at everybody. Everybody. Nobody's going to be safe. And that's the thing. If he gets impeached, Pam Bondi, nobody's going to get fucked because either he's going to see them as doing this to him or being the reason why it's being done to him. He's going to place the blame with Bondi. He's going to place the blame with
or
No.
both.
He's going to place the blame with Hegseth. They all fucked me over. He's not going to help them out because he knows he's not getting helped out. He's transactional. You want a pardon? What do I get? I get fucking impeached. Fuck all you guys. That's his attitude.
Exactly. He's not going to save a damn one of them unless it benefits him in some way. The only people that may get pardons, even as it's all burning down around him, would be he may try to give himself a pardon, which has never
Yeah.
been done before. It's never been needed before. So we don't know how that is going to play. And he may try to pardon his kids.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
one of
even
his
know if
kids.
he'll do that. Yeah, I don't know if he'll do that.
He'll pardon one because he's got a soft
Ivanka.
spot for Ivanka. The
Yeah, that's
rest,
true.
fuck them.
Yeah, no shit. All right, Eric, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Thanks for coming on at short notice. It's always a great conversation. Tell people where they can find your podcast and everything else you're doing.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me. I love being on the show. You can find me over on TikTok for now. TikTok's still being fucky. Um,
Yeah.
some, our friend Hawk over there said he got 48 community guideline violations. I believe it was today. He
Today?
on one account. On one account.
Well, he got kicked
Yeah.
off and then he got back. So he got
Yep.
more? Wow.
He got kicked off. He got his account back. And then in the span of one afternoon, the account that Go Live Vegas just got back got hit with 48 community guideline violations in the span of an afternoon. Some of them are in videos over a week old. But you can find me over on TikTok, for now anyway, at Analytical Iowan. I'm on Blue Sky at Analytical Iowan. And you can catch all of my TikToks and the podcast, the Analytical Iowan podcast, on YouTube at Analytical Iowan and also on Spotify at Analytical Iowan. And if you find me on any of them, I've got a link tree in my bio. It will take you to everywhere else.
Well, and in spite of what Hawk's going through and some other people are going through, I don't have one single community guideline violations, and that simply is because I'm a soft-spoken sweetheart, and
Exactly.
TikTok can't find a thing to get me on. So I don't know why I'm flying under the radar, but I'll ride this fucking train as long as I can ride it, and then just continue what I'm doing on the other platforms. All right, Eric, thank you very much. For those of you listening, thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.